The following film discusses the topic of a mysterious creature not yet known to modern-day science. Some testimonies you are about to see have been inspired by actual events and will be unsettling to those who possess a sensitive disposition to such content. It is the filmmaker's recommendation that you view this feature at your own discretion.
Mother Leeds had 12 children, and she said if she were to have a 13th, may it be a devil. Sometime later, she got pregnant, and she had this child. Came out, it started to mutate and misshape with wings and horns, killed the midwife, and then flew up and out the chimney.
At this point, I just had chills all over my body.
A sharp cry, that's all I can explain. It's sort of like metal scraping against metal.
Like a windstorm in the trees, and I see this figure, and it just vanished in the woods.
Up at the treetops, there was this thing looking down right back at me with its red eyes.
In the dense canopy of these woods lurks something sinister. Where it came from, no one really knows. But what is absolutely certain is that it has wreaked havoc on the local citizens, and has been doing so for over 3 centuries. For years, there have been many theories as to what sort of beast could possibly reside in this area. Is it a demon, a wandering spirit, or perhaps an actual living creature made of flesh and blood? A creature that has continued its bloodline to this day. Those who have seen it are never the same. They recall bright red eyes that glow like fire. And for those unfortunate enough to have encountered its blood-curdling scream, there seems to be no erasing the sound from one's memory. The earliest humans to inhabit this area were the Native American tribe of the Lenni Lenape. They called these woods Papuasing. Translated, it means land of the dragon. Today, this vast growth of wilderness is acknowledged simply as the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and it is home to one of the most horrifying and elusive creatures ever to be cited in the annals of cryptozoology, the Jersey Devil.
The Jersey Devil is probably the oldest known of all the folk tales that exist in this region, primarily because the Pine Barrens have always been such a dominant part of life in South Jersey. The trees sort of shaped our culture, both economically and socially, as to who we are and where the towns were established. And even before then, the Lenni Lenape, who resided in this area, had a legend of a being they called Papuasing, basically place of the dragon, which meant there was something out there in the woods. Now, probably they used it as a story just to keep the children close in case there were any enemies lurking about. But I think that story probably affected the European immigrants who later came to the area, because they adopted that same attitude of there's something out there in the woods.
To some, the Jersey Devil is merely a mythical creature, often the perfect topic for a campfire story, an imaginary farce created by overstimulated minds. It is also believed that eyewitness testimonies of the creature have been, in fact, the misidentification of other less menacing animals that also inhabit the area, such as deer and large birds. For those who are dead set on the authenticity of the monster's existence, however, it is a terrifying scenario that seems all too real. What they claim to witness is an extraordinary force of nature, possessing the massive head of a horse that serves as a base for two great deadly horns. As it stands, its weight is supported by two large legs with hooked feet. Behind it is a set of wings that span twice the size of the creature itself. And perhaps the most unsettling is the sound the creature makes, a fierce, shrieking howl that has been known to cause an individual to freeze in a catatonic suspension of fear. But where did the Jersey Devil come from? There seems to be much speculation as to its origins, but the most popular theory begins with a woman named Deborah Smith, or as she is most notably known as, the legendary Mrs. Leeds, the mother of the Jersey Devil.
The story of the Jersey Devil has been through a lot of changes and evolution over the years. Most people believe that it is probably a creature that was born at Leeds Point, which is just east of Galloway Township out in Atlantic County. It was either a family named Leeds or a family named Shords, where Mrs. Leeds or Mrs. Shords, I'll say Mrs. Leeds simply because that's the most accepted version, was having her 13th child. And the night the child was born, a storm blew up and she just cursed, "Oh, if it's born, let it be a devil," simply because after 12 kids, the poor soul was probably exhausted. And when the child was born, it supposedly changed immediately into a creature that had wings and cloven hooves and horns and flew out the window of the house.
The prevalent story is that Mother Leeds had 12 children, and she said if she were to have a 13th, may it be a devil.
I condemn this child with all I have in me. If this child is to be born, then let it be a devil.
Sometime later, she got pregnant, and she had this child. Came out, it started to mutate and misshape with wings and horns. Killed the midwife, and then flew up and out the chimney.
My baby.
Now, there is evidence that there was a Shords family that lived directly across from where the Leeds family lives, so it's also attributed there. But as I said, the Leeds name is the one that's most commonly associated with the legend. But that dates back to the days prior even to the Revolutionary War. And after that, the Jersey Devil would periodically appear throughout the region, usually when there was times of stress or economic turmoil. And it's been seen everywhere from Philadelphia and Camden on down through Greenwich here in Cumberland County. And there's even been some alleged reports of being out west, but I don't know how much faith I actually place in those. So,
from that moment, reports of a winged human-like monster begin coming in from all parts of New Jersey. However, most sightings are concentrated in a specific area, not too far from the Leeds family home. It isn't long before the creature is seen by credible individuals. One such eyewitness was Joseph Bonaparte, the one-time former king of Spain and the brother of Napoleon.
a lot of the ones that you hear are the Jersey Devil flying over farmhouses and scaring the residents. But this one is a little different, which was why it always piqued my curiosity. Joseph Bonaparte, the older brother of Napoleon Bonaparte, when everything fell apart over in Europe and the family was forced to scatter after Napoleon's exile to the island of Elba, Joseph Bonaparte established an estate for himself in Bordentown, New Jersey. And he lived quite a luxurious lifestyle, probably because he imported a lot of jewels and money along with him when he came to America. But he seemed to have fit in quite well with the people who lived in the area, and they appreciated having him as a neighbor. He was apparently very generous with the use of his grounds, and kids would be able to go ice skating on the pond on his property in the winter months. But one of the things that Joseph did not expect to find was when he was out hunting one day, he turned to find himself face to face with the most horrifying monster, which at the time he did not know was the local Jersey Devil. Joseph attempted to shoot the monster, but the monster simply flew off into the distance after it hissed at him a few times.
As I was hunting on the far side of my estate, I noticed a very strange set of tracks. Though hoofed like a horse, they possessed neither the rear nor the front of the animal. It was almost as if it were from that of an upright horse. I found this very strange and decided to follow them. But the tracks came to an abrupt stop, as if whatever had made these had suddenly lifted into the air and flew away. It was at that moment I heard a hissing sound like that of an alligator when it feels threatened. I turned and saw a creature like no other. It had a long neck, short arms, wings like a crane, the hooves of a horse, and the head of either a horse or a camel. It hissed at me again and flew away. When I told my friends what I had seen, they told me about the devil of the woods. If I shall ever go back in those woods, and I often do, I hope to bring my firearm, in hopes of killing it, and having it as a wonderful addition to my trophy collection.
But then, every time Joseph went out to hunt, it seemed like the monster had sort of gotten a little curious about who this person was and what was he doing out in the woods where he wasn't supposed to be. So Joseph would go out hunting, the monster would wind up on his trail, and Joseph would have to go home empty-handed time after time. So one aspect of the legend that I always found interesting is the fact that Joseph reportedly is still out hunting long after his death because he so loved his property up outside of Bordentown. And from time to time, when he's out in the woods, he still hears the rustle of the wings and the hissing sound of the monster who was on his trail.
Another noted figure to have seen the devil was Commodore Stephen Decatur of the U.S. Navy, who claimed not only to witness the devil, but to fire a cannonball at the creature. It was said that the cannonball went directly through it, yet did no harm, and the Jersey Devil flew away unscathed.
My baby.
For a period of about 5 years, chickens were being slaughtered and taken, all livestock. There was a lot of attacks on just the livestock and animals there and nothing with humans until the exorcism happened in 1740.
He was born or cursed or developed in some way, shape, or form, set loose to the wild, whether on his own free will or after his parents had died and nobody was obviously there to care for the thing. And a clergyman in the area, because this thing, you know, the devil itself, they don't know what it was. It terrorized livestock, chickens, sheep, whatever, you know, goats that they had, whatever they had in the area. What his clergyman, unnamed, nobody knows who he was, what he did, but he was a clergyman. We know that. He performed an exorcism and banished the Leeds devil for 100 years. It was supposed to be good for 100 years, is what he said. And in 1740 he did this. So in 1840 it comes back. And when it comes back, it terrorizes for a good 20 or 30 years, just going back to what it was doing, just raiding chicken coops, raiding farms, just any kind of small animal left on its own outside. The next day you're just finding whatever it left behind. And then there were spottings of it. Even though it was banished, they were spotting it, but it was in the woods and it was minding its own business. And up until the banishment ended, did it ever come back and really start affecting people. People did see it, but it didn't do much. So it was almost like it was relegated to a certain spot, and then that was it. They said that it's been in Barnegat Bay, somewhere in Barnegat Bay. I couldn't tell you if it was on the island or if it was in the mainland area, but they said that it would watch for ships to sink so it could laugh at them. And then it was spotted flirting with mermaids of some sort. Now, I'm pretty sure coastal mariners have seen this. And they've obviously mixed it in with their own little tales. And then one of them has it with Captain Kidd, the notorious pirate of New Jersey. When he would get treasure of whatever type, he would hide it. He would always behead one of his own crew so that their ghost would guard the treasure forever. Well, the headless ghost actually gets associated with the devil as well, and they've been known to be seen together walking the shoreline. That kind, yeah, and then once we get into like the 1900s, does it really start to interact with like Camden, various other cities? Like it goes after, if you left your dog out, it would go after your dog because your dog would kind of like fight for its territory, I guess. You know, this thing shows up. I would definitely want to try and get this thing out of my territory, but dogs weren't winning this fight. I mean, this thing was like 200 years old. Obviously, it's got an edge.
In the area of Landisville, Minatola, which is where my families are originally from, my father used to tell me a story of one of his older brothers who back in the 1930s would run moonshine in and out of the Pine Barrens because he never liked to really work too hard. So that was always a fun occupation for him. But one night, he was supposedly driving his Model T truck out of the Pine Barrens with barrels full of whiskey, homemade whiskey on the back, and he saw a figure running up behind him down the long, dark, sandy road. And at first he was a little alarmed, but then he thought, well, maybe it's just someone racing home at the end of the day. But then as he watched in his rearview mirror, the figure was getting closer. Of course, in those days, automobiles didn't travel very fast. He watched as it got closer, and it had sort of a long, dark shape blowing out behind it. And before too much longer, the figure drew even with his truck, gave him sort of a wicked grin, ran past him in front of the truck, spread out its arms, which turned into wings, and flew away over the treetops. But then my dad always ended the story by saying, but then your uncle did like to sample the product from time to time.
And did your uncle ever talk about it?
My uncle would never talk about it. My uncle was not a social person. He sort of kept himself to himself. But other family members on my mother's side of the family also related stories of having had close encounters. Because in those days, when they were growing up, the farms were pretty well spread out. It really wasn't an overpopulated area where they were at. And one of my uncles said that he had seen something that he thought may have been the Jersey Devil. But he was always a very practical person, and he said he knew that there had been a family in the neighborhood who had had a deformed child that they sort of kept sheltered in the house, and the child would only get out at night. And that was another long-standing reason for the existence of even the early stories, that Mrs. Leeds' child had in fact been born deformed. And that's why people called it a devil, the child of Satan.
Do you believe it's a demon, it's a living creature, it's a conjured spirit? Because there is a lot of rumors of satanic rituals in the Pine Barrens and stuff. Do you think this is...
I would put my money on some sort of conjured spirit. It borrows form from the surrounding area. That's why it has like the horse or deer-like head, the antlers, the serpentine body. We have lizards out here if you look hard enough. You know, the hooves, I mean, they brought horses over with them. I'm pretty sure that there was, you know, much like Chikati, they probably had a couple of ponies or random wild goats, something to that effect. I'm pretty sure it borrows from the wilderness around it in some sort of aspect. I mean, someone had mentioned that it was also like part of the Native American culture as well, that they've seen it, heard of it, or at least knew that it was in there somewhere, whether they did anything with it, about it, or for it. So, I mean, it could have been something that was brought on to protect the land, or it could be just something older than the rest of that, and it's just using whatever form it has to show its presence and what it wants and what it doesn't want. If all of the background stories of it being born to a family and having some sort of like part of the family cycle. Some of the stories have it showing up on a daily basis to the Leeds residence, or what was supposed to be the Leeds residence, and it had like a particular spot on the fence it would sit. And then the family would actually take care of it, sort of, in kind of like a distanced way, but it would show up, and then once the family had passed or stopped showing it any kind of kindness, it went off on its own. But it doesn't look like it's something that obviously has a direction other than what it wants to do.
I have a sister who married a descendant from the Leeds, which is my brother-in-law, and it's on his aunt's side, and her last name is Leeds.
Do they have they told you any stories, or what do they know as far as the?
They don't really talk about it. It's like anything else. They're only stories, and when they say their last name, a lot of people they kind of get jittery or automatically want to ask them questions about their last name and if they are related.
And have they told anything to you personally, or have you?
No, a couple nights we would just be sitting around a campfire and we'd talk about it, and he didn't know too much about his ancestors and what went on and all that. He just knew that something went on back before he was born, and whatever it was, it was.
My name is Laura Kane, and I'm a professional storyteller, educator, and an author. And I grew up in New Jersey. I've been here all my life. And I found out rather early on that there's things that are special about New Jersey. Everybody has a state flower, a state tree, but we're the only state in the entire Union that has an official state demon. And over the years as a storyteller, I've always been asked, well, do you know that story? And I know what one they're talking about. Well, little did I know that the very first time I had the opportunity to tell the Jersey Devil story to a group of Boy Scouts, no less, I would have my own special encounter. Oh, it was in the late 90s, and I was down Tabernacle, just finished a bonfire hayride storytelling event, warming myself up at the farmer's market there with some hot cider and a donut, wrapping myself in a blanket because it was really getting cold that night. But the sky was beautiful. I remember how clear it was, stars everywhere. But there were so many lights around where the kids were that I really couldn't see the stars. So when I got in the car and I headed home, about along 206, Route 206, wouldn't you know it, I come upon a stop sign. And I look left, I look right, I look up the road, and there's nobody around. And I thought, I want to see the stars. So I sat there at the stop sign, and I turned the headlights off. And I lean forward, and I'm looking out the windshield, and I can hear the crickets. And even though it was cold and I had just warmed up again, I thought, I'll roll the window down. So I roll my window down, and the crickets are singing, and I can smell the pines, and I'm peeking up, looking at the stars, and I could see the Milky Way straight across the top between the trees. And it was a rather magical, quiet, silent moment until I heard a strange sound in the woods. It was a sharp cry. That's all I can explain. It's sort of like metal scraping against metal. Well, I only had my window down, and I'm thinking, well, there's got to be houses around here somewhere. Somebody's working on a car or something. So I look in through the trees, and I don't see any lights. No house lights. Of course, there's no street lights on 206. It was dark, which was why I wanted to look out the window. I'm looking up to the stars through the windshield, and then I hear this sound, and it was a weird metal sound, scraping against metal, and I'm thinking, well, maybe there's joyriders out in the woods. When I was a kid, my Uncle Bill took us out into the woods during the day, mind you, and old beat-up station wagon, and it didn't even have rearview windows or mirrors on the outside because he'd scraped them off. And he would barrel through the forest and rub up against the trees on purpose just to hear us girly girls scream. Well, that was the sound I was hearing, this metal sound. So I'm thinking maybe there's teenagers out there in the woods. There are no lights on either side of the road, no sign of houses, no driveways, there's no street lights on 206, so it was really dark. And I had the window down, so I'm listening. I can't tell exactly where the sound's coming from. So I figured, well, whatever it is, I'll roll the other window down. Maybe I can get a better feel for where the sound's coming from. I lean over, I roll my passenger side window down, and I'm listening. And at that point, there's no sound out there in the woods. No engine noises. I don't see any headlights driving through the pines. They get into the sugar sand back there, and you don't see them. You just sort of hear them, and you can't tell exactly where the noise is coming from. So I'm listening, and I realize even the crickets had stopped singing. Then I heard that sound again, that screeching, squealing sound. But this time it sounded closer. And the hair on the back of my head stuck up, just like it's sticking up right now. And I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere at a stop sign all by myself, headlights off, both my windows down, and whatever it is close. And I had just told the Jersey Devil story, maybe 2 miles back, and I had used the ocarina that I had in my pocket to recreate the sound to scare the kids. Now I'm hearing the sound in the woods. Well, right away I lean over, I roll the passenger side window up, I roll my window up, and I'm at a stop sign, so I look both ways. I look up there, nobody's coming, I hit the gas and I'm off. And it was only then that I realized that I'd possibly been holding my breath the whole time. I was safe.
I don't think it would be possible to live in a region like this and not have a story similar to the Jersey Devil. I mean, other areas have similar stories that have grown up over the years, but I think the Jersey Devil is unique in a lot of ways simply because it's, first of all, it's New Jersey's official state demon, and not many states can lay claim to that. Second of all, because it's really maintained a high level of interest from a lot of people, and not just here within the state over the years. You've had newspapers offer rewards for information about it. You've had people who call themselves cryptozoologists who have studied it seriously as possibly some sort of holdover from an earlier age. And one of the things you have to remember too about the Pine Barrens is that the Pine Barrens is home to a lot of unique flora and fauna. And I don't think anybody's really ever explored it at length. So who knows what's really lurking in those trees.
It seems to operate on like the fringes of the Barrens itself. There are stories of inside the Barrens, but it seems to operate more on the outside fringes as if it was patrolling a territory. Even out in Elmer, I mean, once you get in like rural, he picks up more momentum because, I mean, I guess there's just, you know, you go out and you tend your farm fields day in and day out. You have them memorized by the back of your hand. Then you show up and there's like a scorch mark, or there's, you know, an animal that's been eaten, and it's like, it wasn't there yesterday, now I just have bones and fur. What the heck happened? You got to question. And it's not like something goes out, picks this thing up, moves it like 200 feet into your field, eats it, and then leaves. You know, and then vultures, I mean, the progression of nature, if something falls over, something gets to it eventually, but it's not like you've been passing it for days knowing it's there, it just shows up. So, I mean, there's more evidence in the rural because it's, people know their own yards, they know their boundaries, they know what's in it, they know what to expect from it, and then when that changes, you got to find an explanation. If you can't find one, a lot of people blame the Jersey Devil. I mean, it was me and another friend of mine, we did a ghost hunt in Badstow Cemetery. A police officer shows up and we go, who the heck calls the cops on us? I mean, we weren't making a peep. He shows up. Apparently he was getting a call. They had gotten calls that something in the woods was screaming like somebody was being murdered. And he shows up and we haven't heard, we were there for like 2 hours. We haven't heard nothing. And he shows up and he goes, well, have you heard anything? We're like, no. And we ended up swapping stories with this man. We ended up finding all about the church, all about it was a house before. Well, it turns out a family lived there, the father dies, the rest of the family sells it to the now church, so they turn it into church. Well, now they have somebody, and people will see him looking into the windows of the church. When they call the police, nobody's there. There's no evidence of anybody being there. And he gets called on this multiple times. They feel it's the old homeowner looking for his family. But I mean, we were out there for about an hour or two swapping stories with this guy, and he's always being called out to these places about something screaming in the woods. And then when he gets there, nobody's there. Nobody has any information. He'll knock on a door if he sees anybody out, like looking around, because people get nosy. You see a cop car with lights on, people get nosy. He'll call them over. They have no idea. Nobody even knows who called it in or why.
One of the common things you hear in a lot of the folklore is the Jersey Devil scream. It seems to be categorized as inhuman. A lot of people described it as the worst murder or torture of a female, and the shriek that she would issue. It's supposed to make your blood curdle. It scares a lot of people. It is something that's very described, but nobody has seemed to ever actually gotten it on tape or recorded to where they can replay it for people to hear. But they say that if you hear it, you'll know it. And it seems to be there, it's a predecessor to him showing up. And it seems to come from the trees where he likes to sit up top, or the red glowing eyes that go along with it. And there's all sorts of stories with those, that they can hypnotize you, they can freeze you. I know for a fact if I saw red glowing eyes in a tree looking down at me in a screech, I'd freeze. I don't think I'd be hypnotized, but I would freeze. But those are two characteristics that people look for when they go to search for them, or they listen for to try to find them, because they're not normal other animal characteristics that live in the Pine Barren area.
While many claim to have heard the shrieking cries of what they believe to be the Jersey Devil, Ocean County resident Paul Duca experienced a personal encounter that haunts him to this day. He has never come forward until now.
So it was just going to be a guy's weekend. Just, do some fishing, hang out, drink some beers, listen to a ball game, just kick back and relax. That's it. That's all it would be. Just kick back and relax. And we left at 7 o'clock. Got there kind of late, and it was dark, so we just started unpacking, setting things up. And it was really such a long ride that I had to go to the bathroom really bad, so I wandered off, but not too far. But far enough where I can have some privacy, And I've been hunting before, and I did a lot of camping when I was younger, so I'm pretty familiar with the sounds of the woods. So when I get done, I start heading back, and thought I heard my name being called, but it didn't sound like any of the guys, so I stopped dead in my tracks, and I turned around, and there's nothing there, nobody there. So maybe I thought it was one of the guys going to the bathroom too. It was close by to me, and didn't think nothing much of it, so I replied back, "Yo." No answer. So I started heading back, and as soon as I faced the camp, as I was heading back, I saw that the figures of my 3 friends. And there was only 4 of us. So next thing I thought, maybe they were just calling out my name, looking for me. And it's how their voice carried through the woods. So I start heading back, take 3 steps. And I hear my name again. And this time it's right behind me. So I turn around, shine the flashlight. Nothing there, nothing at all. And at this point, I just had chills all over my body. Couldn't explain it. I had this creepy feeling that I was being watched. And I don't know why, but I had this feeling that I had to shine my flashlight up at the treetops. There was this thing looking down right back at me with its red eyes. And all I can think of is I gotta get out of here fast. And I started running back towards the camp. Tree branches are scratching me, and I was just praying to God that this thing wasn't chasing me. So I got back to camp, blew by everybody, jumped in the truck, and I screamed, "Let's get the hell out of here." And we just got there now, and all the guys are looking at me confused. And I had tears in my eyes because I couldn't express myself. I couldn't express myself how serious it was that we had to get out of there. And even though I was in the truck, I just was thinking that they were out there with this thing, and that this thing was going to kill everybody there. And I just wasn't ready for that.
When the interview was concluded, cameras continued to roll. The crew began to notice Paul's reaction, growing more and more unsettled the longer they stayed in the woods.
Is that where you got the scar?
Yeah, running away from this thing, whatever it was.
It's kind of like you have a momentum of that night. As much as you want to forget it, you still have that.
I'll never forget it. You're right. I'll never forget it. Every time I look at the morning, when I wash my face, brush my teeth, I'd get these chills all over my body. I see those red eyes.
Was it like wrapped around a tree, or how was it?
More like a hunched over, kind of like a perched type. It was dark, so I really couldn't, I had the flashlight and there was no other light there, and I just, like it was kind of like perched, so I'm not sure what it was.
What color? When you shine the light on?
That part was dark. That part was dark. All I could how could I explain it? Like, just captured by his eyes, because they were so red, so deep red, just looking at me.
Now a lot of witnesses say that the red, it just has natural glowing reds, but could have been just from the light going into the retina.
No. They were big, and it was like a blood bright red. It was, I'll never forget it. I could tell the difference. Like I said, I've done a lot of camping, a lot of hunting, and I've never, ever seen anything like that. Never.
What effect did this have on your marriage?
I talked to nobody. My wife left me. She probably thinks I'm nuts, but I just isolated myself from everybody, and I tried to explain to her, you have to believe me.
Now, are you more? Does she think you're more nuts, or could your marriage been dissolved? Not so much of what you saw, but how you've reacted since, how you've acted since, through your isolation.
It's probably because of my isolation, because if it's dark, I stay in the house. I can't get outside the house. I'm scared, petrified.
You go out at all anymore?
To do whatever work that I could do during the day. And that's it.
Okay. Now after all these years, why do you finally want to tell your story?
Is
it a closure, or?
You could say I want to know what it was. It's kind of like a closure, but I want to know. I know what I experienced. No one else can tell me different, because everyone's doubting me. It wasn't a UFO. There was something there. I can't explain it.
Now, what's going through your mind, knowing everything you've learned? You've gone to church. You know that the only animals in these woods are deer or rabbits, raccoons. Then you see something like this. How does this totally affect what you know to believe, and just turn it on its head?
I just know to believe that there is something else out there that is beyond a bear. It's not. Bears don't go that high in trees. It was bigger than an owl. Owls don't have red eyes like that. Like I said, I'm very familiar with the woods, and there's something else out there.
Now, you don't go in those woods anymore, but
you're willing to come this far, which is maybe 5 minutes from where it happened. Are you comfortable?
No. Not at all. I'm shaking in my pants. Whenever you're done, I'd like to leave.
No greater to the legend of the Jersey Devil is that of the personal accounts of the monster on the actual property of local homeowners. One such account comes from a man who will only be identified as Jim. He has asked that we alter his voice and conceal his identity.
I saw the Jersey Devil with my own eyes. My story takes place in the backyard of my own home. I was in the backyard trimming up some brush and cleaning up the overgrowth. I must have been out there for a good hour or two. The whole time I was out there, I kept having this feeling. I was being watched, but I never had a feeling like that before. I've been, and I realized it was really getting to me. And then I realized it was quiet, like not normal quiet, but it was quiet. I mean, no cars, no animals, birds, nothing. Everything really got really, really eerie, like spooky, like it was creepy. And this was outside. This is the middle of the day. I don't get scared. I don't get scared easy. And I ain't gonna get scared in my own backyard in the middle of the afternoon. I tried to act like it was just my imagination. I'm telling myself it's all in my head, but I knew something was out there. It was just I just felt something watching me, and I really was getting spooked. And you can feel when the hair on the back of your neck starts. I've seen it on TV and stuff and people say it, but when you actually experience this feeling and the hair on the back of your neck stands, I never had that feeling before, and you feel this pit inside your stomach, and it was just bad. It was just bad all around. And I got one last look around. There's nothing, and then I saw this movement. I saw this movement. And I was like right there in the woods. Tree branches started swaying, and I looked again, and I saw this figure. I finally see what's out there, but I still can't make it out. It's sort of, it's brownish gray, and it blended in the trees like camouflage. And I'm thinking it's gonna come down to me. I gotta get the gun. So I'm thinking before this thing comes down, I'm gonna get the gun. I gotta get into the house. So I started running. Man, and I run, I hear this. This is like a windstorm in the trees, and I see this figure, and it just vanished in the woods. And I don't know if I scared it away, but it definitely scared me. And I went back out there later that day with my gun, and I looked for some kind of sign of what it was. And there was nothing. There was nothing. I couldn't see nothing. And I was ready for it. I was ready for it this time. So I walk around this little patch of ivy. I walk around there, and I'm looking. I go a little farther back. I'm thinking, well, for as big as it was, it had to be a certain size. But I thought it would have to be bigger if I walked farther back, and I walked farther back and realized that this thing could have been actually bigger than I thought. So I went farther back, and I saw this tree. It had this broken branch and these marks on it. And I know when a deer makes antlers, scratch the trees and stuff, and you see that all around the woods and all around my backyard. I get deer all the time, but these were like 4 deep claw marks that just went right across. You know, this ain't even a bear. I ain't got bear in my area. You know, I got the only way you can fly in with you know, my whole area is fenced and stuff. The only way you can get in is if you fly in. You know, so I ain't got bear in the area, and it just saw these claw marks, and that really put the fear of God in me. You know, when I saw that, I thought what this thing could have done to me. You know, and I guess that's the thing that bothered me the most. You know, I had children out playing there in the summertime. You know, my kids come. You know, and I guess what scared me the most is what that thing could have done to me. Being out there with them claws, or my wife coming home and finding me in the back, in the backyard with what this thing could have done. You know, if it did to me, what it did to them tree. You know, if it did to me what it did to those trees, it was a lucky day for me. It was a lucky day for me. And I don't even want to think about it.
Oh, from a personal standpoint, I always like to be open-minded about these things. It's when I've done book signings for my books, a lot of which related to the supernatural, I'd have people come up to me and be embarrassed to tell me their own personal experiences, but I would encourage them to, simply because I don't know all the answers and I don't expect to in this lifetime. So I find myself being perfectly comfortable feeling there's a lot of things in this world that I don't understand and probably never will. And if somebody tells me this is their experience, well then, that's their experience, because perception is everything. So.
Is he out there? Probably. You know, I haven't seen any evidence to prove that he's not. And I've found some weird things out there. Nothing like substantially weird, but stuff that I look at it and I go, you know, that's probably, you know, that could be it. And then I leave it at that. You know, if he's in the area, then obviously I don't want to get booted for being caught.
Probably when I was at school, when we were kids. Not the teachers share that sort of information, but you know how kids talk. And I grew up in Runnymede, so we were surrounded by a lot of houses and businesses and everything. But there were people that lived further down the road from us that were in the woods. And there was a water processing plant back there. So there was swampland and everything. And I remember a friend of mine saying that you go down there at night, sit out in the backyard, and because they were so close to the swampy area of Timber Creek, you could hear some really strange, weird noises back there. And then somebody started mentioning, well, you know, the Jersey Devil lives here. And I'm thinking, what? I really wasn't a storyteller back then, so I just sort of half paid attention to it, figuring it was just another story like haunted houses and ghosts and things. And so that was about the first time I remember. Probably middle school, I guess.
Well, there's a place off Route 72 down there. They call it the Chatsworth Pit. And it used to be a place where everybody would go, bring their dirt bikes and four-wheel trucks. And they also used to hold devil worshiping down there. Also, they used to have clan meetings down there. And we did come across one. And as soon as we seen, you know, what they were doing, we took the trail out. We didn't want to get involved or have them see us. And there's a lot of things you can do out there without people knowing that you're doing them. You would have to experience it for yourself. There's something definitely out there. Anything's possible, and it's one of those places you would just have to go out and see for yourself. You'll hear things that you normally don't hear, whether it's bobcat, wolves, coyote, screams that you don't know where they come from or what they are. Or what you're going to run into. It's an unsettling place sometimes at night.
Early on, then they said, you know, we don't just have the Jersey Devil. There's plenty of places with ghosts and things. And they said, do you know the legend of the Lenape? And I, what legend? She says, you know, if you desecrate the Pine Barrens, the Lenape used to live here. And if you throw litter out your window or something, you're going to end up on the side of the road with flat tires. Oh, how's that happen? She says, well, it's happened. I've heard it happen. And you just pull over and you think, now I got a flat tire. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And people get out and they go back to the flat tire and they find an arrowhead stuck in the tire. Well, that was rather unusual, and that's been in my head ever since. Not something you can forget. Luckily, I've never had to find an arrowhead in one of my flat tires, but of course I don't throw litter out the window either. So there's a good lesson for you. Don't throw litter into Pine Barrens, or you might end up with an arrowhead in your flat tire.
The woods are creepy enough. I go out there by myself every now and again. I do the geocaching. I do just to get away from people. I'm not a big people person. I'm very antisocial. So when I need to get away and kind of get quiet, and that way I can de-stress, I go out there and I just take like a quick walk through the woods and just listen to nature, and then I walk back and I feel so much better. But in those little walks I've had, you know what I mean, you see like a weird track you can't explain. You see something real strange, and you kind of go, well, that doesn't look like nature or wind, or, you know, why would kids put this up in a tree? You know, one of those.
What else do you think's out there in the Pine Barrens?
Well, I know we're getting bear in the area, so I know we have something larger out there. So any kind of scratch marks larger will now, well, we got bear, so that could attest for that. But I mean, we didn't have bear many years ago, or at least a heavy population. So you walk through the woods and you see scratch marks up high. You kind of go, well, bobcats are only so big, and deer make a rubbing. They try and get to the heart of the wood on that thing, and then this is real weird, like something had marked it and it moved on, that kind of stuff.
And you personally have ever had an experience with what could have been a Jersey Devil?
No. And then I'm gonna be completely honest. If I had, I'd have lost all sense. I'd have froze. I'd have fainted. I don't know what I'd tell you. Helping my buddy. He had borrowed a patrol car, and he'd gone up north to take a test. On the way back, we cut through from Tuckerton to Atzian. We cut through not the woods itself, but through the past Badstow. And he was turning on the side spotlights, and he looks at me and he goes, man, what would you do if the Jersey Devil, I turn on that spotlight and the Jersey Devil's right there, running alongside the car? I said, dude, I would freak out. I said, you couldn't drive this car fast enough. I would get out and I would run faster than this friggin' car if he was right there next to us. Because there's no way you can make this thing move fast enough to get me away from that thing. There's a book that has like short stories written about the Jersey Devil, and a couple of them have like fatal attacks. More or less, the person goes missing, and then at the end of the story, you never find out if they're alive or they're just, you know, like somebody hears something on the roof, and, well, the first thing I would do is open the window and lean out, and then the thing grabs them and pulls them away, and then they're gone. Stuff like that. I mean, I haven't heard anything where somebody disappears completely. It's like, oh, I'm going on a hunt for the Jersey Devil, and then they never come back, and then nobody ever finds them. You know, I'm pretty sure the police would be out there. We would have something more substantial.
It's one of those places where you can stop anywhere along the highway, get out of your car, take a couple feet in, and hear nothing but birds. No cars, no noise, and just be with nature. And there's a ton of places down there, hidden lakes and hidden ruins, and if you want to go hiking, it's just one of those places to get away from the city.
It sounds very odd, especially for somebody from Paranormal Group. I would say it's magical. That you get away from everything. It's its own little world. You know, the water is cedar water, and it's tinged with the color, but it's, you know, you can still go out and wash your wounds with it. It actually cleans them. It's like an astringent. There's so many things there. There's a reason why, in a time way before ours, why the first settlers and why the Native Americans lived there. There's so much there for us that we could live off of. There's so much there, that nature and flora and fauna, where it's just gorgeous. That's where I go to get away. That's how I unplug. I go out there and I get in the tent and I stay there for days and I enjoy it because there's so much to view and to smell and to feel, and it's new every time.
Having grown up in Vineland and lived and worked for most of my life in South Jersey, one of my greatest fears is to see us lose the unique lifestyle that we have down here. Because to me, we're one of the last strongholds of individual communities who are proud to be individual communities. We don't want to be homogenized and look like North Jersey or any big cities in any other states. We like the lifestyle that we have here. We like our open spaces. I personally know there's nothing I love more than to be able to look over every horizon and see trees lining the distance. And I would hate to think that the day might come when we would lose that simply because somebody decides it's time to start tearing down the trees and building more high-rises. So I hope when that day comes, I'm haunting this place along with Frank Andrews and don't have to be protesting on the front lines. I hope it doesn't happen in my lifetime, so.
It's the last little piece of oasis in a very, very overpopulated state. And if you live in North Jersey, they think, we're all farmers and we all live we're all pineys and we have a certain way of saying things. I could say my mother-in-law, she's a little bit piney because she does say things a little different than most of us. But to me, the Pine Barrens is a very unique ecosystem, and we need to respect it and try and keep it as pristine as we can, because it's something that was here before we got here, and if anything, we should leave it here when we leave. And so conservation, ecology, preserving places, not just for us, but for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren someday. You can't just throw litter everywhere and expect it to disappear. Mother Earth doesn't know what to do with it all.
What's your fondest memory of the Pine Barrens? When you think of the Pine Barrens and your most magical moment?
I like kayaking. I took that up when I turned 40, so I'm going to pick up a new sport. And picked up rollerblading when I was 30, so 40 is kayaking. And you go out on a lake, and you get far enough back in the lake that you don't hear the cars going down the road. And if you're lucky, you're not living anywhere close to those parachuters shooting out of planes and all, so you don't hear that either. And that's when you hear the Pine Barrens, the real Pine Barrens. You start hearing the frogs. You start hearing the cedar waxwings in the trees. That's when the bald eagle flies right over your head, or you see the kingfisher fishing along the lakeside. I mean, it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's away from all the people, and I would say that's really, truly the Pine Barrens, is when you get away from the people stuff and you get back into the forest stuff. And that's when you meet your real neighbors.